The way I see it, there are two ways to live. You can find those moments that fulfill you and hold them tight, those specks of time that mean so much, and will allow you to keep going. Or you can have more than a moment, you can have a future. Somehow in this postmodern world, you make a life. One of those is much easier, the other one much more fulfilling. Which do you pick? Hi, I'm Milamba. I am meant to be studying psychology, but in all honesty, the teaching is so biological and neurological that I find more fulfillment in the sociology options I take. And speaking of sociology, it really is true that it makes you miserable, and that you really can't watch anything, as it really does kind of lean into cynicism and not just criticism sometimes. Take the new Doctor Who. I've realised I dislike it because it's full of neoliberal assumptions about the continuity of specific structures of being. I love How to Train Your Dragon, but whenever I think about it, I somehow end up contemplating how complicit Hiccup and the dragons are in the genocide enumerated in the plot. And movies are either ignoring climate change, leaning too far into the post-apocalyptic storytelling, or somehow under the impression that neoliberal states and corporations and institutions would just stay the same in the future despite climate change. I really can't stop thinking. However hard I try, my thoughts just simply race through my mind, catastrophizing about so much. And so the question on everybody's minds is, how can we live with ourselves? When Will Wood laments about the cicada days, when Christmas songs really do long for a Yuletide show, The Miracle of Manna, an inch of snow, just an inch, compared to today when biannually at least the pipes and asphalt will freeze and we still talk about it. When Philip Labes apologises for this stupid sorry state, when Bo Burnham sings about that funny feeling. I could go on. Many artists have addressed this feeling, but the question is, how can we keep going? How can we live with the past? How can we possibly contend with being the most technologically advanced we have been? So many benefits to living now compared with in the past. Well, it also seems we are economically fallen on our faces, environmentally gone up in flames, and politically exploded. There are some books which try to address this. The Ministry of the Future is a book that provides some hope for how we might recover after the inevitable climate warming that happens. How to Blow Up a Pipeline is a book about, well, the reasons behind certain political actions, even in the face of indifference. And so you think I would talk about these books. But there are so many voices being so loud all the time, it's hard to focus on the ones which are talking about what we can do, just to hear them above the chaos. So many things to do, to plan, to say, to protest, to help, to care. We are asked to care so much. And what do? Some people would fall into effective altruism. And I can see why capitalism seems like the answer. How it provides a future that is more than a moment. But capitalism is not the answer. That's not a very easy statement to say. My point being, people feel like capitalism is the answer. It provides simple economic laws that allow for the swift, convenient transfer of whatever you want to where you want it. It is useful. Pragmatic. Capitalism is the opiate of the masses. Yes, I know he was talking about religion, Marxists, don't come at me. The thing that keeps the rich rich and ideology as the unexamined bias in the system has really got to be helping capitalism along. To instill from an early age the idea that money holds community and society together and not the actual people in it. It's comforting to feel secure in your financial position, as if this will offer you some protection from all the problems of the world. And it's even oddly secure that we have economics when you are economically insecure. Which is very strange, isn't it? Probably has something to do with neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is a surprisingly slippy term, I found. Personally, I find referencing the policies post-Thatcher and post-Reagan to be a good starting point, but having now read Wendy Brown on the topic, I feel we need a better definition. Let's say neoliberalism is the transformation of ideology such that markets are seen as default, that governments should be seen as necessary, but also that having a small government is good, that bureaucracy is necessary evil due to just how complicated people are, that people are just so complex. Neoliberalism has helped a lot with instilling in people the idea that capitalism is normal and helpful, and the solution. Especially if you have been raised in this milieu, French, why do social theorists use it? The soup of assumptions that we have been raised in. Well, we in the West have. Well, we in the walled world have. Well, basically, we who have been raised under these assumptions have it. To say that all people everywhere have experienced this is a bit generalizing, because it ignores how different countries run things, how different governments act, and what their milieu might be. To say the West is also not accurate. It ignores the colonialism in places like Latin America that have suffered so much. It's comparable to other places of European colonialism. So to say the West is inaccurate. The walled world is the other one that I said, but that isn't great, as it places a certain historical priority on us Europeans. And I think that leaves out the way that it kind of is a product of this milieu that I'm talking about, because it views developing countries as behind us when really they preceded us in many discoveries, and so it just kind of divides up the world in the way which it thinks that the world should be divided up, which is useful, but it isn't what I mean when I'm talking about capitalism as this milieu of feelings. Gosh, history is hard, which is probably why I took geography. My point being, capitalism has heavy overtones in many of us. Well, I know in me, and I presume in you. And to think it would be stable given time or circumstances or something better happening somehow is obviously a comfort. To think capitalism would solve our problems. To think that your job or future job or possible position will allow you to do something good for someone else. It's comforting. I understand that. And of course, material benefit does help, but is money material benefit? And is that really the same thing as a future? To us here, in places that seem economically progressed, do we ever really consider the fact that most of this is built on the labour of people? How alienated from the products that we have that we forget the transnational exploitations that go into everything we own? Sorry, that's a real downer on conversations. It really kills the mood and really just reinforces this heavy, oppressive feeling of everything weighing in on us. Maybe that's why sociologists are never invited to parties. We're all always complaining about the unjust working conditions. But anyway, if we can't really think about those things now, what about the people in those suffering places, the people exploited or left behind? What about those in the place YouTube won't allow people to speak about plainly, the non-eastern coast? And in those places that suffer and aren't talked about as much, when was the last time you heard someone talk about Ukraine? What about Lebanon? And giving money really does help. But the reprieve it gives, the ability to save people from the specific place of their suffering, when those people become refugees, think about how your country treats refugees for a moment. Are they gonna find a future? Capitalism sees them as non-essential, as non-mournable, as Judith Butler would put it. There's also this great video. Some people are never going to be secure, and most of us are never going to feel contented. And so I could point out all the ways in which capitalism is ever collapsing, ever going to fall over, ever going to crash and hit us with economic recession and then recover the pieces and keep chugging on like nothing happened. I could, but I think the personal issue of potentially not having a world to live in is pressing harder on our heads at the moment. The fact that capitalism doesn't really provide solutions for climate change other than the desperate hope of some invention coming along to just save us. We don't really feel like capitalism gives us a future, do we? It also doesn't feel like capitalism will provide a future for everybody else. Sure, if you can ignore the injustices and imagine that everyone will go on living, you can get by. I think that's the way rich people think. Rich people get futures, but the rest of us, we only get moments. Everything Everywhere All at Once is a movie that resonated with a lot of people. I wrote an essay for my sociology class about the way it displayed modern and postmodern temporalities and how they evolved and how metamodernity might be what it's suggesting through its solution. That's a lot of complex sociology talk, and I can see why my sociology teacher said, like, it's not quite right. But I think pop culture is probably going to be a good way to explain to you what I'm talking about. In the movie, the first section is called Everything, and so capitalism is everything. Capitalism drives Evelyn's business decisions. Getting an audit shows us all the ways that she has to monetize what she does, justify in terms of money what it is that she is doing with her life, how all her decisions can be unified under capitalism. And this is pretty modern. It's not really anything that complex, it's a meta-narrative, as some sociologists would put it. It is like a unifying way of looking at the world. But then it snaps. The movie shows us the multitude of worlds that exist beyond this one. Section 2 shows us everywhere else. All the ways her decisions were worlds away from economics. The meaning of anything is fragmented and broken up. There is a prime universe and her home universe, but everything else is just variations, something other trying to intrude upon her life with a different form of meaning. And Joy represents this postmodern life come to its crisis point, if you like. Her ability to switch between any frame of reference where signifier and signified are a circle, where reason is taken out back and shot, where capitalism means nothing in the face of everything else. When you pile it all up, all of this just collapses in on itself. When people are forced to live in the world as we've made it, people collapse, just as the bagel does. We can't live with ourselves anymore. With the weight of everything, everywhere, pressing down on us all at once, we can't live. That hopeless conclusion that there is nothing is the view Joy takes. But it's a choice to take that view. Because Evelyn, helped by Waylon, tries loving, tries finding the specks of time that matter, and using them. In the finale, I think it's best displayed, when she learns how to fight, she's rushing up the stairs to get Joy, and is trying to show us that people need to find something to hold on to, the thing that makes them happy, and just hold on to it, find that as your meaning. The thing to combat postmodern hopelessness is just finding the things that help you through it. Yeah, I can definitely see why my supervisor said this didn't actually link into the sociological materials. It's a nice thought. The idea that just holding on to those moments will get you through. But that isn't a life. I cry whenever I see this movie. It is amazing. But this idea that specks of time are what we have seems slightly ideological. Let's interrogate social acceleration and resonance. Hartmut-Rosa is not the only social theorists to describe the state we are in currently. The discussion of what modernity is, what postmodernity is, covered by a whole host of people. It's been going on for decades. But his theory here is helpful, specifically because it outlines the fact that society is speeding up, and specifically desynchronizing different systems to its own demise. Using some examples, we are using up natural resources faster than the ecosystem can regenerate them. Political decisions are so much slower than the public thought that should be driving them, but also people can't keep up with the speed of the internet. There are more examples in his book. Most of his book is digging into how social acceleration can be displayed in the modern world. But the point being, people are not allowed to resonate, as that is his solution. Resonance. Resonance being when people are travelling at the same speed as something else. Resonance is an idea from physics where two things happening can add together to create a peak amplitude that's larger. Again, that's just very specific, and the sociology side of it is also a bit weird. It's basically asking us to live. When I first encountered this, I thought he was talking about moments. Moments of resonance, like those specks of time Evelyn clutches to for her meaning and happiness. But that idea that we only have moments is actually just another product of acceleration. It has been shaped by the cultural milieu to make us think that only having moments might be the only alternative that we have to the crushing weight of hopelessness. No, Rosa is tapping into a different feeling. Alexander Panos says that his album Nascent is about becoming, the desire to become a better human being, longing to actively participate in the world around you, striving to actualize your potential, and finding meaning in this process. In the album, it's the line, "I want more than a moment. I want a future." This is what resonance is. Being able to live without being alienated, taking your time to experience the world. But how can we do that with the noise of the postmodern world? You can't just say the solution is resonance when it presupposes that is the answer. It's like saying the solution to hunger is a meal without giving the instructions on how to make the food or eat it. That's no solution. So, we are still left with the question of what to do. In psychology, when people want to change, do they need some deep motivation? No. When people act, is it a conditioned response? Not necessarily. Or is it perhaps something instilled due to some weird attraction to their parents? Oh, Freud. When us psychologists look at behaviour, I don't really look at it in that way. I find current science lacking, and so I find solace in critical psychology. It has helped me regain some hope that there is a solution to the modern kind of approach in psychology. But there is another text that I am reading at the moment that is, I think, more relevant to the problem I'm addressing to you. 1,000 Plateaus by Deleuze and Guattari? I don't speak Italian, sorry. I am not saying you should read this book. It is dense theory and it's very odd style. It's also not safe for work, very not safe for work in some places. If you've read House of Leaves, you might enjoy it. But I can explain, I hope, what it is saying. It is intended to provide a new type of thinking, a new analysis, a way to have a new thing that is anti-fascist, anti-postmodern, anti-ideological, anti-Oedipal. They call it schizoanalysis. It was the 90s, so maybe they could have picked a better term for it, but that's not really the point, though. The point is not the name, the point is how you exist. It comes down to this, I guess. Don't look for a start, a beginning, as A new way of life doesn't come with a definitive start point. The life you want to achieve doesn't start at some arbitrary point. Don't think about breaking away from old habits as if that will make you different from the past. But also don't see endings as the stopping point for a process. The idea that the past has an end and past that point you won't be affected by it. There is only the middle, the ongoing transformative process. That is their point. The point being that you aren't just a being, you are a becoming, and becoming, and becoming, a constant additive process. You are never static, you are ever composite and changing. You must embrace the multitude of meanings that everything everywhere all at once does. But you mustn't think that relegates you to only some points of intensity. So be more like Nascent and make something that integrates you into the world. Move through the world and be implicated in it. Feel things and actually sediment yourself. Don't just move through it passively, actively be in the world. But don't think that this needs you to do something in specific. It's more about acceptance that what you are doing is your life. There is no one unified whole. There's not a constant chasing after a purer, wholer experience. This is it. This is all. You're experiencing your life. You can experience more or less. You can cut off possible avenues of growth by treating the world as if there are true forms you must seek after, that there is a main thing and branches. But that doesn't allow for the full potential of rhizomatic existence. A rhizomatic existence, that's so much more catchy than schizoanalysis. And it's their point. To be rhizomatic. I really have explained what being rhizomatic is. We've reached the end. I have said my piece, perhaps a little floridly, perhaps I wasn't able to get across the full scope of what I meant. But then again, perhaps our rhizomes were shaped, are shaped, will be shaped, by this video. Are you still clutching to mere moments? Or is the full future still awaiting you? Or are you embracing now as living your life? It sounds a bit like a tautology when you say it like that. Living your life. I mean, of course it's a tautology. That's what that verb is there to do. Living, as describing your life. I suppose it's about finding meaning. How do you define yourself? Do you find moments of happiness or intensity and define yourselves around those few specks of time? It certainly is one way to go, but it atomizes people. Not atomizes in the sense of breaks them apart from each other, but breaks them apart personally into small parts of being. Are you waiting for that one thing to take you away, that future point, that future that you long for? That the form of resonance with kind of the general world. That end point? Or can you accept being in the middle of your life? Always being in the middle, always being in totality, the interactions and the things interacting all together, forming your rhizome. Your rhizome as the totalizing experience of your life. Can you?